She turned her head just slightly, the kind of movement that doesn't belong to chance. Her gaze lingered, not long enough to be scandalous, but too long to be innocent. That was the first time I realized how quiet the world could get when someone really looks at you. I was standing behind the counter at the Community Arts Center, volunteers shift, Wednesday evening, the smell of old paint and lemon cleaner thick in the air. She walked in like the moment had been waiting for her. A white shirt tucked into charcoal slacks, silver earrings catching the light. Her hair was pinned up carelessly, like she didn't care who noticed. But I did. She asked where the figure drawing class was held. I could have just pointed to the sign on the wall, but instead I said I'd show her. She thanked me in that low, almost absent-minded tone people use when their thoughts are somewhere else, or on someone else. The hallway was empty except for the sound of her heels clicking against the polished floor. Every step seemed deliberate, unhurried, as if she knew I was watching. I walked a step behind, pretending to look ahead but catching her reflection in the glass display cases, her mouth pressed in thought, her eyes scanning the walls like she was remembering something. When she stopped, I almost walked into her. "This is it," I said too quickly. She smiled without looking at me. "You sound like you're relieved." I didn't know what to say to that. My hand brushed the edge of the doorframe beside hers, close enough that our fingers almost met. Her perfume was faint, something clean, like linen and late summer rain. "Do you draw?" she asked, turning her head slightly toward me. "Sometimes," I said. "Mostly I watch." The corner of her mouth moved, a small, knowing curve. "That can be harder." She stepped into the studio, but her voice lingered behind. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it, like she was testing me without asking a question. I stayed at the door longer than I needed to. From where I stood, I could see her placing her bag down, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture slow and intimate in a way she probably didn't mean it to be. Later that evening, the class ended early. She came out alone, coat folded over her arm. "You waited," she said, not surprised. "I didn't mean to," I lied. She laughed softly. "That's the best kind of waiting." Her voice was a mixture of warmth and distance, a tone that suggested she'd had this conversation before, maybe many times, but with people who didn't notice the pause between her sentences the way I did. Outside, the air was cool, the kind that holds the smell of wet leaves and faint electricity before rain. She hesitated near the door, looking down at her phone, then up at me. "Do you always stay this late?" she asked. "Only when someone gives me a reason." That made her look at me fully for the first time. The kind of look that lands and stays steady and calm, until it becomes a question neither person wants to answer. For a moment, I thought she might say something, anything. But then the lights in the hallway flickered, breaking the spell. She blinked, glanced away first. And in that tiny, almost invisible moment, between her turning and me not, something unspoken began. She came back the next week, earlier this time. I was already there, pretending to reorganize brushes that didn't need reorganizing. "Again?" she said, smiling just enough for it to sting a little. "I work here," I said. "Do you?" She glanced at my hands, streaked faintly with charcoal. "Or do you just like the view?" There was no safe answer to that. I wiped my palms on a rag, forcing a laugh that came out thinner than I meant. She turned toward the easels, the curve of her neck catching the late afternoon light. I found out her name from the sign-in sheet, Elena Warren. The careful handwriting matched her, precise, but with something frayed underneath. She wasn't wearing a ring. I noticed, then hated myself for noticing. During break, she sat by the open window. The air carried the scent of turpentine and rain-damp air. I brought her a paper cup of coffee without asking if she wanted one. "You're persistent," she said, accepting it anyway. "I'm polite." "Polite," she echoed, blowing gently on the coffee. "That's a rare kind of trouble." She looked out the window as if she'd said too much. Her reflection hovered on the glass, older, beautiful, the kind of beauty that doesn't invite comparison, only quiet attention. "Were you ever married?" I asked before thinking. Her shoulders tensed barely. Once. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. Then, almost as if to balance the weight of her silence, she asked, "And you? Girlfriend?" "Not anymore." That was quick. Maybe I'm not good at waiting. Her lips parted slightly, not a smile, exactly, but a recognition. "You're too young to mean that." I wanted to tell her that age had nothing to do with how long a person could ache for something, or someone, but I said nothing. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. When the class resumed, she stood behind an easel, sketching, her wrist moving in soft, deliberate arcs. I circled the room, pretending to check supplies. When I passed her, she shifted just enough that her shoulder brushed my arm. A small touch, but deliberate, or maybe not. I felt the warmth of her skin through my sleeve, an afterimage that stayed even when I moved away. After class, I found her packing up slowly. The others had left. The studio felt hollow, holding only the scrape of her pencil case, the quiet rhythm of breath. "I'm not sure this is appropriate," she said, eyes still on her bag. I didn't say anything. "That's the problem," she murmured. "You don't have to." She looked up then, directly, unwavering. The kind of look that crosses a line without saying where it is. Her fingers brushed mine when she took her coat. Not by accident. Not quite on purpose either. She didn't move them away right away. Neither did I. Then she exhaled, a quiet, trembling sound, and stepped back. "Good night," she said, but her voice had changed. Softer. Unsure. When the door closed behind her, the echo of her touch stayed, small and electric, like a secret I'd just agreed to keep. It started raining again the following week, the kind that falls softly at first, like it's trying not to interrupt anything. The building was nearly empty when she arrived, coat damp at the shoulders, hair slightly undone from the wind. "You're still here," Elena said, breathless from the weather. I was closing up. "Then I'll only be a minute." Her tone said she knew that wasn't true. She set her sketchbook down and began flipping through pages, pretending to look for something. I stood near the doorway, half wanting to leave, half wanting to stay exactly where I was. The room smelled of rain and linseed oil, a strangely intimate scent, like something you'd only notice if you were too close. "You ever feel like—" she began, then stopped. Her fingers stilled on a page. "No, never mind." "Like what?" She looked up. "Like you're doing something you can't explain, but you can't not do it either?" I didn't answer right away. The silence between us filled the space until it felt solid, almost heavy. She smiled, small, nervous, and reached for her bag. "Forget I said that." Before she could leave, thunder cracked outside, sudden and close. The lights flickered. She froze mid-step. "Guess you can't leave yet," I said quietly. She looked out the window, then back at me. "Guess not." I walked over, pretending to check the switch on the wall. She moved closer to see, her shoulder brushing mine again, that same familiar, accidental touch that wasn't accidental anymore. We both looked at the switch, then at each other. Too close to pretend otherwise. There was a sound from the hallway, footsteps, a voice calling. "Anyone still in here?" Elena stepped back fast, breath catching. "It's Marcy," she whispered. "The class coordinator." I nodded, heart thudding too loud. When Marcy peeked in, Elena was bent over her sketchbook, pretending to be absorbed in a drawing. I stood by the supply shelf, suddenly fascinated by paint thinner. "Storm's bad," Marcy said, smiling. "You two should head out soon before they lock the main doors." Elena nodded. "Just finishing up." The moment she left, we both exhaled, almost a laugh, almost relief. "That was close," I said. Elena's eyes softened. "You make it sound like there's something to hide. Isn't there?" She didn't answer. The silence felt like an admission. She packed her things slowly, each motion deliberate. Her hand trembled slightly when she reached for her coat. I caught it before she could pull away, not thinking, just reacting. Her fingers froze in mine. Warm. Unsteady. For a second, she looked at our hands, then up at me, eyes wide, uncertain. I can't, she began. I know. The rain beat harder against the windows, filling the pause with sound. Her hand stayed in mine anyway. We didn't move, didn't speak. The world outside blurred into gray, and for one suspended heartbeat, everything else disappeared, the age, the rules, the people who might see. When she finally pulled away, it was slow, reluctant, like leaving something half-finished. Neither of us said goodbye. But when she turned to leave, she stopped in the doorway, and for once, neither of us looked away. The rain hadn't really stopped in days. It made everything feel slower, streets, thoughts, breath. Elena came in late, hair damp, eyes distant. She didn't speak at first, just set her umbrella by the wall and sat on the nearest stool. You shouldn't be here this late, I said. Neither should you. Her tone was sharper than usual, not angry, more like she was fighting something she didn't want to name. She looked at me then, and whatever she was holding back flickered across her face, something like exhaustion or surrender. I tried not to come, she said quietly. I know. She laughed, barely. That makes it worse. We stood there, the silence humming like static. I keep thinking, she said after a moment, that if anyone saw us together, they'd misunderstand? They'd be right. Her honesty caught me off guard. I took a step closer before I could think better of it. The air between us tightened. She glanced at my hand as if she could feel it moving before it did. When I brushed a strand of hair from her face, she didn't stop me. Her breath hitched, small, sharp, and she closed her eyes like she was afraid to see what she'd let happen. Elena, don't, she whispered, but she didn't move away. Her pulse was visible at her throat, fast and uneven. My hand hovered near her cheek, not quite touching. I could feel the warmth of her skin, the tremor in her breath. You think I don't know what this is? She said, opening her eyes. I've lived long enough to see how it ends. Then tell me to go. She hesitated, eyes searching mine. You wouldn't. Try me. Her mouth parted, as if to speak, but instead, she reached up and touched my collar, fingers tracing the damp edge of fabric. It was the smallest thing, but it pulled me toward her like gravity. You don't understand, she murmured. I can't afford to want this. And I can't seem to stop. The room felt too warm, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. I could smell the faint sweetness of her perfume, mixed with rain. Her hand was still against my chest, just enough pressure to keep me there, not enough to push me away. People will talk, she said softly. Let them. She shook her head, but her fingers didn't move. You're too young to know what a mistake feels like. I know what it looks like when someone wants something and won't let themselves have it. For a long moment, she just looked at me, not with surprise, but with something closer to defeat. Then she whispered, Don't make me choose. I already have. The words hung between us, unsteady and dangerous. Her hand slipped from my chest to my wrist. She held it there, tight, trembling. We were inches apart when the studio door opened, sudden, sharp, light spilling in from the hallway. She flinched back, breath caught in her throat. A voice called from the doorway. Elena? You left your phone. I didn't hear the rest. I only saw the way she looked at me, terrified, wanting undone. The phone dropped onto the table with a dull thud. We both stood frozen, the space between us still charged, still alive. Whatever was about to happen, it was already too late to stop it. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't go in. I even made it until noon before I broke the promise. When I walked into the studio, she was already there, earlier than usual, standing near the window with her phone in her hand, unread messages lighting the screen. Her coat was still on. Elena, I said softly. She turned, startled. You shouldn't be here today. I could say the same. She sighed, pressing the phone to her chest like it might keep her steady. Marcy saw us. The words dropped like something solid between us. What? She didn't say it directly, but I know. The way she looked at me when she gave me my phone back, she knows. I felt a chill despite the sunlight creeping across the floor. Elena paced, the movement tight and restless. She's been at this center for 15 years. One rumor and… Her voice broke. She turned away quickly, pressing her hand against her mouth. I stepped closer, instinct before thought. No one's going to, don't. She shook her head sharply. Don't make promises you can't keep. The way she said it wasn't cruel, just tired. Like she'd spent years cleaning up after other people's promises. I don't care what they think, I said quietly. That's because you still have the luxury not to. Her words stung, but more than that, they scared me, not because she was wrong, but because I knew she was right. She turned toward me then, and I saw it, the faint tremor in her hands, the fear hiding beneath the control. I reached out before I could stop myself, fingers brushing hers. Elena! She pulled back too fast, knocking her sketchbook to the floor. Pages fanned out, drawings scattered, loose graphite sketches of hands, faces, eyes. Too many eyes. Mine, over and over again. I froze. She didn't try to hide it. She just stared at me, breathing unevenly. You weren't supposed to see those. Why? Because they make this real. The silence that followed was unbearable. The air between us felt electric, dangerous, alive. I kept telling myself it was curiosity, she said finally, voice shaking. That you reminded me of something I'd lost. But that's not true, is it? I moved closer, slow, deliberate. Then what is it? She looked up at me, eyes bright with something she couldn't disguise anymore. It's want. The word landed softly, but it burned all the same. Neither of us moved for a long time. The rain outside had stopped, but everything inside still felt storm-touched, the air heavy, charged. Then she stepped forward, just enough for her breath to brush my collar. If I stay here another second, she whispered, I won't be able to stop. So don't stop. Her eyes closed, a flicker of pain, of surrender. You don't understand, I already did this once. Fell for someone I couldn't have. I promised myself. Her voice broke again, the words dissolving. I reached for her hand, this time not asking permission. Maybe you don't have to keep every promise. She exhaled, trembling. Then we both lose something. Maybe that's how it's supposed to start. She didn't answer, just stood there, shaking, until finally she looked at me like she was about to say yes to everything she shouldn't. But before she could speak, the phone on the table buzzed. Once. Twice. She looked down. A name flashed on the screen. David. Her husband's name. She'd never mentioned one. She didn't pick up. But she didn't look at me again either. The next evening, the studio lights were low. The storm had moved on, but the air still smelled of it, metal and wet pavement. I hadn't meant to wait for her, but waiting was all I seemed to do anymore. She arrived just before closing, no umbrella this time, her hair darkened from the mist. Her eyes found me immediately, as if she'd known I'd be there. I wasn't going to come, she said quietly. I know. She took a few slow steps inside, closing the door behind her. The sound echoed, a soft, final click. For a long moment, we just stood there, neither speaking. The silence was different now, heavy with everything we'd already said, and everything we hadn't dared to. Was that him? I asked finally. The man who called. She nodded once. My husband. The word felt foreign coming from her mouth, like she hadn't said it in years. I didn't lie, she added. We've been separate for a long time. Just not enough to be free. I swallowed hard. And me? She looked at me then, really looked, as if weighing something enormous. You make me feel alive. That's the problem. Her honesty hurt more than any rejection could. Elena. She closed the distance before I could finish. Not a step, more like a surrender, a slow, inevitable leaning forward until the space between us dissolved. Her hand came up to my chest, light at first, then firmer, as if testing whether I was real. I could feel the tremor in her fingers, the uneven rhythm of her breath. Tell me this isn't wrong, she whispered. I can't. Her eyes softened, glistening, a thousand things unsaid in that small, shaking look. Then don't say anything at all. Her forehead came to rest against mine. The warmth of her skin, the faint scent of rain in her hair, it was too much, and not enough. Every part of me wanted to close the distance, to erase the ache that had been building for weeks. But beneath the want, there was something sharper, the knowledge that whatever we did next would change everything. I can't promise I won't hurt you, she murmured. Then we'll be even, I said. That made her laugh, soft, broken, too close to a sob. Her hand came up, brushing my jaw. For a heartbeat, we both leaned in, close enough to feel the shape of the other's breath, close enough to forget where the line was. Then she stopped. Her lips hovered just short of mine. If we cross this, she whispered, it won't be just a mistake. It'll be real. I want real. She closed her eyes, shaking her head. You don't understand, that's what terrifies me. We stood there, motionless, suspended in that unbearable almost. The room seemed to shrink around us, the sound of our breathing louder than the rain outside. Finally, she stepped back. Just one step, but it felt like falling. Her voice was steady again, though her eyes weren't. If I stay, I'll forget who I'm supposed to be. And if you go? She hesitated at the door, fingers tightening on the handle. Then maybe I'll finally remember. She left without looking back. But as the door closed, I realized she hadn't really walked away. She'd just given me the truth I had been chasing all along. We both finally understood, some things are meant to stay almost. Weeks passed before I saw her again. The studio felt different without her, quieter in a way that didn't belong to silence. Every brush stroke, every sound of paper shifting, reminded me of something unfinished. Then, one evening near the end of winter, she came back. No class scheduled. No reason. Just her, standing in the doorway with that same quiet poise, a scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. For a moment neither of us spoke. The air felt thick again, but softer now, no storm behind it, only the weight of everything we'd already lived through. Hi, I said. She smiled faintly. Hi. It was a simple word, but it felt like forgiveness. She walked over to the same stool she'd always chosen and ran her hand over the paint-splattered table. I thought you'd be gone by now. I tried, I said. Didn't stick. Her laugh came low, quiet. You never did listen very well. I'm getting better, I said. Mostly. We both knew what mostly meant. She glanced toward the window. The sun was setting, amber light stretching long across the floor. I left him, she said finally. It was time. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The truth was already there between us, humming in the quiet. She turned to face me then, eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. I don't know what happens next, she admitted. I don't even know if this can work. I took a step closer. Then we'll figure it out slowly. Her breath caught, but she didn't move away this time. My hand found hers, tentative, almost shy after everything that had passed between us. Her fingers were cold from the outside air, but they tightened around mine with a steadiness that made something inside me go still. I don't want a secret, she said softly. Then don't be one. She smiled, tired but real. You make it sound simple. Maybe it doesn't have to be complicated. We stood there like that for a long time, no rush, no hiding, no storm to interrupt. Just two people who had finally stopped running from what they already knew. She leaned in first this time, resting her forehead against mine. There was nothing hurried or desperate in it, just warmth, the kind that doesn't ask for anything back. Her hand came up to my chest, over my heart. You're shaking, she murmured. Maybe I'm just finally breathing. She laughed quietly, that small, disbelieving sound that had once been my undoing. Then she reached up, brushed her lips against my forehead, soft, certain, a promise that didn't need words. We stayed like that as the sun slipped lower, until the room turned gold, then dim. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined. It was better, quieter, more human, something that might actually last. When she finally whispered, "We'll be okay, won't we?" I didn't answer right away. I just held her hand tighter, the silence saying everything words couldn't. And for the first time, either of us looked away. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?